Hey everyone, so I wanted to do a second video in our series of talking about the exploitation of the vulnerable service VM, that the client dev CTF. And so the first one, if you remember, we got our foothold on the machine using Evil WinRM through Windows Remote Management, finding those encoded credentials, decoding the credentials, using those to access the machine. Then we found an unquoted service path and used that service path to elevate our privileges all the way up to the NT system user. Today, the video is going to be a little bit shorter because we already have access to the system. So what we're going to do today is elevate our privileges through bad service permissions. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So we're just going to go back in the exact same way we were in before, through Evil WinRM using Windows Remote Management. And then we're going to go to Program, Files, x86. And then we're going to go to Vulnerable Service. We're going to go to Vulnerable Service Exercise. And then we're going to take a look in here, and we'll see that this vulnerable service exe is in here. Now, no one should, remember, I'm a low privilege user, so I'm not an administrative user. So there's a lot of things that I can't do. But for example, I shouldn't be able to do net start. Yep, access is denied. Now, this service is configured very poorly. Let's take a look here. So I shouldn't be able to view this as a standard user, so I have way too many permissions on this service. I can see that it has that unquoted service path, which we've already exploited. Now, looking in this folder, again, we've got the service sitting here. Now, a standard user should never be able to write to a service directory. So let's test that. Let's see if we can write it. And we can. So what that means is that we can hijack this service. So we can get execution as the NT system user by hijacking this service. So what we want to do is we want to first rename first we want to stop the service, right? And this in and of itself is a vulnerability, but now the service is stopped. So then we want to rename the original file. And I can't remember how to do that off the top of my head, so we're going to Google it real quick. Rename item is what we're looking for. So PowerShell, rename item. Great. So we want to do rename item vulnerable service.exe, and we will rename this old.exe. And we did. We renamed it. So now what we need to do is we need to now transfer our service payload over to there that's going to hijack this machine. So we want to do some of the same things we were doing before. We want to set up a service handler, and we need to name it the same thing as we do before. Hold on just one second. So what I'm doing real quick right now is I am making sure that the VM is set up properly to do this. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to go to our client CTF folder, and then we're going to use MSFenum. We're going to do payload is going to be Windows shell reverse TCP, and talk about it just briefly. So the syntax here means that I'm doing a stageless. If you guys want to Google what that means, great. If not, you can reach out to me and I'd love to explain it to you, but I don't want to dig too deep into it in this video. But what we're doing is just a simple shell that will connect back to us as the NT Authority system user. And so our L host should be 192.168.0.52. Our L port is going to be 1337 because we are leet. And our format is going to be exe service. And then our output is going to be vulnerable service.exe, if you remember, because that's what we named it before, right? So then what we need to do is we need to set ourselves up a web server here so that we can transfer the file over. And we're going to set that up on port 80. So we've got our web server running on port 80. We've got our file in here, the vulnerable service.exe. So then now what we need to do is we need to download it. Let's see. It looks like I might have got re-IP. Oh, did I get it? Nope, I did not get re-IP address. It was just being weird. So we're going to get rid of tests.txt because we already know we can write there. We can see that's gone. Great. So now we're going to download this file at .web client. Then we're going to call it .download. Let's blow this up. Download file. Then we've got to say HTTP 192.168.0.52, and then it's vulnerable service.exe, and then we want to place that into C:\/ program files x86 vulnerable service, and then vulnerable service exercise, and then it's going to be vulnerable service.exe, and that should take just a second to download. Let's make sure we hit our server here. We did, and now we should have vulnerable service.exe here. Now we need to listen up here, so we need to do sudo rl wrap and c lvnp, and we said port 1337. I think I mistyped my password. Yep. There we go. So now we're listening. So now we should be able to do service start on vulnerable service. And it said, oh, I should have done start service vulnerable service. Hopefully the service failed to start. But that's because it wasn't an actual service and we got our payload. So now we can see we got our connection from 192.168.0.38. So that's our victim machine. That's the client CTF machine on an ephemeral port. So reaching out to us, and we are the NT authority system user. So we have taken complete control of this machine because we, as a standard user, had way too much permission on here. So if an attacker were to get a foothold on this machine like we did, and then they had this same permission set, they could elevate their permissions all the way up, and now we can do a variety of things. And one of the exercises, we'll steal some passwords, we'll crack some passwords, show what we can do after we've gained complete control of the machine. But for now, our goal is to elevate our privileges all the way up to the top to the NT authority system user. And again, this one was done because of bad service permissions. Let me know if you guys have any questions. We'll see you next time.